many religions claim to hold the key to man's salvation. Scientology is no exception.
The most fundamental explanation as regards Scientology's basic beliefs is that man is basically good, and that the individual is a spiritual being, that you've lived before and you'll live again, and that your capabilities are infinite, if not yet fully realized.
We have the ability to actually help make a difference in the situation in Haiti, and I just can't, see not using this plane to help.
But behind the church's high celebrity profile and pious exterior lies a leadership at war with its real and perceived enemies. They include a growing band of former Scientologists and any media like Four Corners that dares to report their grievances.
That was a private investigator who's been following us all night long.
In recent months, a storm has erupted around Scientology. In Australia and overseas, the church stands accused of breaking the law and destroying families. Its critics are growing in strength and numbers, openly challenging the church over how it treats its adherents and punishes them.
It's a slave camp, there's no question about it, because people are definitely abused.
Bound and blindfolded, women of 55 years old.
I was angry. Don't get me wrong, if I could have gone up there and king hit the very individual that signed my daughter to scrubbing out a dumpster, I would have been there.
Tonight on Four Corners, former members of the church who say they've suffered enough shine a light on the dark side of Scientology. In 1968, a British camera crew caught up with an eccentric middle-aged captain on his boat, the Royal Scotsman. The American was L. Ron Hubbard, and he'd made a name for himself as the founder of Scientology.
The subject name means skill, which means knowing how to know in the fullest sense of the word, ology, which is study of. So it is actually study of knowingness. That is what the word itself means.
When this interview was filmed, Hubbard was in trouble with authorities around the world. In the United States, the tax authorities were after him, and his followers stood accused of practicing mind control techniques.
Do you ever think that you might be quite mad?
Oh, yes. The one man in the world who never believes he's mad is a madman.
These are no ordinary seamen. Their allegiance and devotion to the mysterious man is total. To them, he is my Commodore.
Hubbard was on the run, moving from port to port, and had surrounded himself with a core of young and loyal Scientologists. He called them the Sea Organization, or Sea Org.
I was one of about 10 or 15 people who was invited, being the highest trained.
Hannah Eltringham Whitfield was an early member of Sea Org, and Hubbard rewarded her loyalty by appointing her captain of 2 ships. She remembers him as a complex, contradictory figure.
He appeared a quite distinguished, normal-looking, middle-aged person.
Did you and your fellow adherents in the church see him as some kind of savior?
Very definitely, yes.
But there was a dark side to L. Ron Hubbard. Behind the jovial smile lay a taste for extreme forms of discipline. How were people treated on those ships if they misbehaved or if they transgressed?
Abominably. I mean, looking back, I deeply regret even my fringe participation in some of the things that went on, and I'm ashamed of some of them. People were thrown overboard, hands bound and feet bound and blindfolded, women of 55 years old, for running a process incorrectly, a counseling technique incorrectly in an auditing session, you know.
These people would be rescued, but Hubbard exercised absolute authority over his crews, and those who crossed him risked being consigned to a punishment group he called the RPF, the Rehabilitation Project Force.
They were dressed in rags, they were filthy, they weren't even allowed to bathe except maybe once a week, and their food would be served to them in slop buckets, and they would eat out of those slop buckets on the deck with their hands. And, you know, looking back at something like that, there's no way anyone can justify not saying something, not doing something, yet not one of us spoke out, not one of us did anything.
Hubbard's culture of unwavering obedience and extreme discipline survived his own passing in 1986 and continues to the present day, under the leadership of his successor. In Australia, the movement Hubbard founded has had a stormy passage. After being banned in 3 states in the 1960s, Scientology achieved the legal status of a religion in 1983, allowing it to be tax-exempt. Now, there are calls for its status to be reviewed.
There definitely needs to be an inquiry into the church's status, because it's not really a church. You may have a philosophy that's religious, but it's strictly business.
Joe Reish is a former rugby league star who played for Eastern Suburbs and Canterbury Bankstown back in the 1970s. He was recruited to Scientology in Sydney at the age of 19. Later, he moved to America, and tonight he's speaking out for the first time.
Initially, I wasn't attracted to it, but I was curious about knowing how someone could be better. And I'm always about improvement. And if that was a way to improve me to be a better athlete or a better football player or a better person, I was interested.
As a well-known football player, Joe Reish was treated like a star by the church. And he wasn't just successful on the field. He was a fast learner of L. Ron Hubbard's teaching.
I did the highest level by the age of 23.
The painful experiences hidden in your reactive mind are the cause of your fears.
When members of the public are recruited into Scientology, they learn about Dianetics, L. Ron Hubbard's self-styled science of mental health.
What would life be like if all of the pain you've experienced no longer affected your abilities, emotions, and behavior? You would be yourself, free to enjoy life and reach your full potential. In short, your mind would be clear. That is the goal of Dianetics.
But learning Dianetics costs money. Joe Reish calls it the bait and switch.
What they don't tell you is that if you want to go clear, which is what Dianetics sells, that's a $35,000 to $75,000 project. You don't know that. So there's your first bait and switch. You buy a $3 book, and it's going to cost you 50 to 75 grand.
Some Scientologists pay even larger sums to move from Dianetics onto Scientology's more advanced spiritual pathway, the Bridge to Total Freedom. The Bridge contains a series of levels designed to increase your spiritual powers.
Once you go clear, they say, well, forget about that. You need to go spiritually free. Well, hang on, I just got in to get rid of the mind. Now you tell me I got to go spiritually free? And there's another switch. But they don't tell you that's going to cost you as well. And there's this whole route all the way through the top. Oh, that'll run you 150 to 250 grand.
How much did you spend in all?
Well, prior to the marriage and with the marriage, I would say a total between my wife and I at the time, maybe $400,000 to $500,000.
I'll just stack these in here.
Okay, we need to shift our roll till I start stacking.
One Australian family who fell foul of the hard sell were the Andersons from Canberra. Now they've left the church, this is their third trip to the rubbish tip to offload their stock of Scientology materials.
Many thousands of dollars, eh?
Hope the tip's open today.
As public Scientologists trying to master the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard, they found themselves deluged with phone calls asking them to buy more and more of his books.
Be too late.
We were receiving up to 250 phone calls a fortnight to buy books. Not to buy books, to donate books. If not to donate books, it's to buy a second set, you know?
It is an enormous commercial enterprise, isn't it?
No, it's a religion. It's a large international religion that you know is exactly that, a religion.
But it makes an awful lot of money.
Well, the church is definitely the beneficiary of its parishioners and people who feel strongly about their religion and choose to give back to it and give to the planet as a result.
What many parishioners never discover, unless they pay to work their way up the bridge, is that L. Ron Hubbard, a prolific author of science fiction, wrote a secret scripture in 1967. In it, he describes how an evil intergalactic warlord called Xenu visited Earth millions of years ago, and the spirits or body thetans of people he killed are the cause of many of mankind's spiritual ills.
I was one of the first people who was introduced to and read the materials and was expected to start exorcising these body thetans, the body spirits, from my body. I couldn't believe the material, yet I knew I had to for my own survival and for my own eternal salvation.
By 1985, Scientology's elite unit, the Sea Org, was back on dry land, and Joe Risch joined up in Florida to work for the church full-time. There, he married a fellow Scientologist.
How much were you paid?
At the time, I was paid $20 a week. Exactly. I mean, the hourly rate was into the maybe 12 to 15 cents an hour. Because we were getting fed, we had some birthing, despite the fact that it wasn't the greatest. We felt that we were at least contributing to something.
Everyone who joins the Sea Org signs a contract for 1 billion years, making a commitment to return and serve the church for endless lifetimes to come. Joe Risch was the go-to man when wealthy donors who were disillusioned with Scientology wanted their money back.
I was their #1 boy in Florida for doing all of these, let's call it resolutions and solving those problems.
In 1986, Joe Risch and his wife took steps to leave the Sea Org. Later, they divorced, but they and their children remained Scientologists. For 19 years, Joe Risch had jobs outside the church, often as a personal fitness trainer. Privately, he started questioning the church.
I had mentioned various things that I had some disagreements with, you know, to someone like, why is it so expensive? And then that person would write a report about that and send it in.
In 2005, he was summoned to an internal inquiry called a Committee of Evidence, where the secret internal reports on him were disclosed. He was accused of entering into bad investment deals and breaking the rules of the church. But he says he wasn't allowed to see the reports, call witnesses, or have any kind of legal representation. Months later, the committee handed down its final report, shown here for the first time.
I went through the 7 or 8 page report that just basically listed out all of my crimes. Where they accused me of things that I said I wasn't guilty, they said, you're guilty, and here's the evidence. But the evidence was from those reports that were hearsay.